Though a lot of people may think of it as a console geared more towards platformers, RPGs, and action games, the Super Nintendo wasn't shy about dishing out some horror every now and then. Well, if we're gonna get pedantic about it, and yeah, of course we are, this is the internet, the Super Famicom wasn't shy about dishing out horror. Sure, in the West we got Super Castlevania, Demon's Crest, and Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. But the real nail-biting, turn the lights on and hide under a blanket kind of stuff, like Clock Tower, remained exclusive to Japan. I mention Clock Tower because it's well known and has now had an official Western release. But there's still a treasure trove of horror hiding on the little 16-bit console that Nintendo built. Which brings us to the topic of this video, Otogirisou, a horror sound novel developed by Chunshoft, who are now known as Spike Chunsoft, after a merger in 2012. Now, you may be thinking, sound novel? Don't you mean visual novel? But no, there's actually a distinction, and as usual, I'll take a winding path to explain. Visual novels rose to popularity on Japanese home computers throughout the 1980s, one of the earliest examples being Yuji Horí's The Portopia serial murder case. And yeah, I said Yuji Horii, the dude who would go on to create Dragon Quest. The Portopia serial murder case was actually one of publisher Enix's first big hits. Again, this is well before the Square Enix merger. Portopia was developed by Chunsoft, only their second game, and its distinctive design, at the time anyway, was hugely influential, unleashing a flood of similarly designed games that dominated Japanese PC software sales charts. Chunsoft would go on to develop the first 5 Dragon Quest games, as well as Jesus, which they found time to fit in between the releases of Dragon Quests 3 and 4. Praise be to Chunsoft. After finishing work on Dragon Quest V, they decided to start publishing their own games. So after spending years honing their RPG developing skills and crafting some of the greatest and most influential video games of all time, another RPG seemed like a surefire slam dunk for a company looking to shift into publishing and make huge sales on their own. But, oh my friends, you underestimate Japanese gamers' love for visual novels. So no, Chunsoft's first self-published game was not an RPG, and it wasn't technically a visual novel either. Chunsoft decided to create Otogirisou, and they dubbed it a sound novel. So what's the difference? Let's look at the playbook. In the 1980s, for like 99% of visual novels, you got the illustrations up here, you got the text down here. And a lot of the time you got some actions or functions on either the left or right side of the screen. The focus is on the visuals, up here. Usually there's something explicit going on too. And yeah, while there are visual novels that have good writing, sometimes even great writing, the screen real estate is mostly reserved for the illustrations. This is the template that Chunsoft established all the way back in 1983, and is the DNA for almost all visual novels, even to this day. Now a sound novel, on the other hand, is not focused so much on visuals. It's focused on sound. Boom. Is your mind thoroughly blown? But no, it's slightly more nuanced than that. While sound design is key, and we'll look at that more closely later, after playing a few of these titles as research for this video, I feel like the focus is more on the text than anything else in sound novels. The illustrations are minimalistic and covered up by walls of text. While the writing of visual novels is typically more focused on dialogue, the writing in sound novels balances descriptions, exposition, and dialogue more like how actual books do. And that makes sense considering they're less reliant on illustrations to literally paint the picture for you. And so, with Otogirisou, director Koichi Nakamura, who had worked on many of the early Dragon Quest games, wanted to create something that was simple enough to be played by anyone, regardless of their skill level. So the story goes, his girlfriend at the time couldn't really get into the more intricate design of the games that he had created up to this point. You have to remember, this was the late 80s and very early 90s. Many RPGs and visual novels used commands such as search, look, use, and talk, all as separate actions to interact with the world and move the game forward. Some, like the Portopia serial murder case, even used a text parser, where you had to type in actions. For Otogirisou, Nakamura chose to simplify this system by having the player simply select different options. I'm not saying that Otogirisou was the sole innovator in this regard. It's more like a natural evolution of design that was going on to streamline gameplay for a wider audience. But Nakamura was also influenced by Capcom's proto-survival horror Famicom title, Sweet Home. He recalled playing the game and being absolutely terrified. He wanted to create that experience of almost not wanting to progress the game because it was so scary. And so, Otogirisou was born from these two design principles. Since the emphasis was going to be on the story and writing, Shukei Nagasaki, a novelist and television writer, was brought on board to craft the game's narrative. What resulted was a choose-your-own-adventure style of game centered around a young couple that find themselves alone in an abandoned mansion after experiencing car trouble on a mountain road. Not the most original setup for a horror story, but in 1992 it was a unique approach for a video game, and Otogirisou proved to be a modest sales success. Released on March 7th, 1992, the game sold over 300,000 units and inspired other devs to try their hand at releasing horror games on Nintendo's home console. Chunsoft themselves went on to create a trilogy of horror sound novels. The second, Kamaitachi no Yoru, also released on Super Famicom, is pretty legendary and more than doubled the sales of its predecessor. But for this video, I want to focus on the first game. Otogirisou is firmly focused on narrative, atmosphere, and sound. The presentation is filled with tense music and ambient effects. There are even subtle touches like the effects sounding closer or farther away depending on what's happening in the story to increase tension. This isn't the kind of game that's going to leave you huddled in a corner shaking with fear like, say, I don't know, Super Mario 64 if Google's definition of a Super Nintendo horror game is to be believed. But Otogirisou is a creepy and fun ride. Also, another thing before we jump into the game proper, there is an English fan translation of Otogirisou, so you can play this for yourself if it sounds interesting. There are actually 2 translation patches out there created independently. I'm playing user But Thou Must's patch, but the other patch from Tom is also a really good option. I'm also using the no honorifics version of the patch to get rid of the sans and chans attached to names, because I just think that reads weird in English. Most of this video is going to be about the game's story. As you progress through Otogirisou, making different choices, the narrative takes shape and results in 10 different endings. We'll also be looking deeper at the structure of the game and how the choices affect the story throughout, but needless to say, all of that contains heavy spoilers. If Otogirisou has piqued your interest at all, I highly recommend playing it for yourself and coming back afterwards to watch more. Also, if you think this video is going to be boring because not much is happening on screen, trust me, you don't know what you're in for. So with all of that out of the way, let's dive into Otogirisou. The game begins with a suitably ominous title screen to set the tone. Imagine back in 1992, sitting in a darkened living room or bedroom and being confronted by this image and this music. Makes you feel like you're really stepping into a world of horror. After pressing start, we need to name our file, and I don't know why. I didn't even think about it when I was inputting this, but of course, whatever name you put in is going to be the name of the main character in the story. It says so right there. So yeah, our protagonist is going to be named Chill for this entire thing, which is so stupid. It's almost as stupid as naming your YouTube channel Dungeon Chill. So we join Chill and his girlfriend Nami as they're driving home from an afternoon fishing trip. Nami is asleep in the passenger seat, but suddenly awakens, yelling something about the car. After slamming on the brakes, we find out that she was having a nightmare. Once she calms down, we get our first choice in the game, deciding how to feel about her sudden outburst. We can choose to ignore it, or feel an ominous premonition. So already, in its first choice, Otogirisou introduces us to the nuances of its branching paths. Not only will we be choosing different actions or directions, but we'll also be choosing how our main character interprets certain events. I chose to play dumb and see how far I could get by being the skeptic for this playthrough. After this, Nami notices a patch of yellow flowers in a nearby field. These are the Otogirisou of the title. In English, the flowers are called St. John's wort, and I'm so glad the fan translators decided not to change the title of the game. Changing the title would have also made it so the legend behind how these flowers got their name wouldn't have made any sense. As Chill explains, the kanji are read as younger brother, cut, and grass, or grass that cuts the younger brother. Nami is interested in the story of how the flowers got their name, and we can choose what flavor to give the legend as we retell it. Since I'd never heard this legend myself, I decided to give the long, exaggerated version of the tale. Long ago, in the heart of a deep, deep forest, there lived two falconer brothers. They were close and always went out hunting together with their hawks. And yeah, I was confused by this too. Falcons and hawks are different birds of prey. But I found out that apparently falconers use hawks as well as falcons, and regardless of which bird they use, they're still called falconers. It's because hawkers is used to describe merchants who sell cheap goods, so instead of getting all mixed up in that, falconer is the commonly used term. So, there you go. Bring that little factoid up next time you need to make conversation with someone. Anyway, for generations, this falconer family was famous in forests far and wide, and they had a secret medicine passed down through the generations that could save a hawk even if it was on the brink of death. One day, a nobleman who'd heard of the village's reputation for producing great falconers organized a falconry contest. The brothers, along with many other falconers in their village, participated. The day started off clear, but a storm rolled in and hail began to fall, big as fists. The hail pelted the hawks as they were flying, and they were seriously wounded. The nobleman saw what was happening and canceled the contest, but he was an asshole, as most noblemen are, and said that the event would only be postponed for 5 days. The falconers had until then to heal their hawks and get them ready to participate in the rescheduled contest. Any falconer who couldn't nurse their hawk back to flying condition in time would be beheaded. Told you the guy was an asshole. Now, all of the falconers in the village knew of the family's secret medicine, so they begged the brothers to share some with them. The younger brother was willing, but the older brother refused. Apparently, their ancestors had created the medicine through a painful experience that the rest of the villagers had put them through. Their father's dying words were for them to never give the medicine to any of the other villagers. The younger brother was bothered by this conundrum. Yes, it was their father's dying wish, but how could he let the other innocent falconers in the village be killed because of some nobleman's assholery? Unable to sleep, he went out for a walk and came upon a young woman attempting to drown herself in a pond. He managed to stop her, and she told him that her father was a falconer, and she couldn't go on living all by herself if her father was killed. She'd rather wait for him in the afterlife. Hearing her anguish, the younger brother went back home and brought her the medicine. He also told her to share it with the other falconers in the village, but he never said anything to his older brother. And so, 5 days later, the falconry contest was held again. This time, the weather was agreeable, and all of the falconers in the village participated in the event, their hawks having miraculously recovered from their injuries. The younger brother didn't participate. He stayed behind and waited for his older brother to return. When the older brother came home, he asked the younger if he had any regrets. The younger said no, and the older brother pulled out his sword and decapitated his sibling right then and there. The blood from the wound sprayed across their family garden, leaving permanent blackened spots on the leaves of the yellow flowers. And so, these flowers gained their name, Otogirisou. After finishing his story, Chill can't quite remember what the flowers are supposed to symbolize. But he doesn't have a lot of time to figure it out. As Nami points out, it looks like they've lost their way. Before they can decide what to do, a car comes flying from the opposite direction on the narrow mountain road, flashing its high beams. Chill turns the wheel and barely avoids a head-on collision, but his car has left the road and is barreling downhill now. He stomps on the brakes, but they're not responding. So next we choose how to attempt to stop the car. Trying the emergency brake seems the most logical to me, better than driving right into a tree or plunging into a river. However, the emergency brake doesn't work either. Chill and Nami give themselves up to fate, closing their eyes and waiting for the inevitable, when suddenly, the car just stops. Chill and Nami find themselves parked in the middle of a forest, but they notice a small light in a grassy clearing ahead. They get out of the car and Nami believes she saw the light move. Chill assures her that it's just the light from the window of a house and that it couldn't have moved, but Nami insists. Before a full-blown argument can take place, lightning strikes a nearby cedar tree, splitting it right in half. Part of the tree falls right on top of the car. Oh, great. Not the reaction I think I would have had if my car had just been crushed by a tree that had just been struck by lightning while my girlfriend and I were recovering our senses after narrowly avoiding a fatal collision on an unfamiliar mountain road at night in the rain, but Chill's a chill dude. So grabbing a bag of clothes and a flashlight from the trunk of the ruined car, the couple make for the strange light in the grassy field ahead. As Nami and Chill draw nearer to the light, they find that it is in fact coming from a house. Nami is still in shock from the lightning strike, so Chill decides to take her hand to comfort her, but she instantly recoils, saying that his face looked like a dried up mummy for a second. Okay, there are nicer ways to let someone know they need to moisturize. Lightning strikes again and the rain starts to fall harder, so the two hurry toward the house. As they leave the trees, they realize that what they at first thought was a grassy field is actually a field of Otogirisou. The flowers seem to be guiding them toward the house. As they move closer, they discover a dilapidated Western-style mansion. Feeling his courage flagging, Chill suggests that they turn back, but as he says so, it appears that the mansion is moving closer to them. Turns out, Otogirisou are twisting around their feet and moving them closer to the gate of the old house. It's a weird scene. For some reason, it reminds me of the image of Harker being guided into the carriage on his way to Castle Dracula in the 1992 Coppola film. Probably because I recently rewatched that movie for the last video, but also it just conjures up images of an otherworldly draw toward the house. The gates to the property open without any resistance, and the couple enter the front yard, which is also filled with Otogirisou. As they stand mustering their courage, Nami thinks she hears rustling among the flowers. Chill suspects it's just the wind and rain, but then a snake slithers out of the flower patch. And it's not just any ordinary garden snake. It's a rattlesnake. Chill and Nami run to the front doors of the mansion but find them locked. They pound on the doors, yelling for someone to answer, but get no response. The choice is either break one of the windows or shoulder through the locked door. Chill throws his weight into the doors once, twice, 3 times. The lock breaks and he tumbles into the darkened entrance. Nami rushes through and slams the doors shut behind her. Chill picks himself up off the floor and Nami notices he's bleeding. So he licks the cut. What a freak. They decide they need to apologize to the owner for breaking and entering, but despite loudly announcing their presence, the mansion is quiet. With a storm raging outside and a rattlesnake barring their escape, they choose to take shelter. Chill and Nami also comment on how strange it is that there's a rattlesnake in the front yard, a species which is not native to Japan. They survey the entrance and notice a suit of armor near a fireplace, as well as a large fish tank full of dirty water. We get the choice of whether to stick our hand into the water or look into it from above. Can't we just have a choice to leave it alone? Then they hear a creaking sound from the second floor. Thinking it's the owner, Chill and Nami climb the stairs, but as they do, they notice the suit of armor that was by the fireplace is now missing. On the second floor, they enter a nearby room illuminated by a small desk lamp. Chill notices a book on a side table as the door suddenly slams shut behind them. In a panic, he tries to open the door, but it won't budge. Lightning flashes and illuminates a darkened corner of the room where they see a mummy sitting in a wheelchair. And yeah, the original Japanese uses the word mira for mummy. Chill realizes that what he at first thought was a smaller table with the book atop was actually the mummy's lap. Suddenly, the desk lamp goes out, and they start to hear the creaking sound of the wheelchair rolling toward them. Finally, the door gives way, and Nami and Chill fall out into the hall. The lights have gone out here as well, and they frantically search for their flashlight before Chill remembers he set it down before he went to investigate the fish tank earlier. Moron. So they fly down the stairs and find the flashlight where they left it. When Chill flips the switch and shines it toward the second floor, there's nothing there. Curious about what they just experienced, we get the choice to go back upstairs on our own or ask Nami to investigate for us. What a guy. Even if you choose to go alone, Nami tags along anyway. When they get back to the room from before, the lights come back on and they find a black cat. But the wheelchair and mummy are gone. The book they saw on its lap earlier is now lying on the floor. While Nami scoops up the cat, Chill inspects the book. He discovers a diary with the last entry written 6 years ago. A dried Otogirisou is pressed within the pages. There's also fresh blood on the back cover. Now a new sound comes from the hallway. Nami nervously, half-jokingly, wonders if it's the suit of armor. The cat jumps out of Nami's arms and runs out the door. The sound disappears, and when the couple peek out into the hallway, they find nothing. Nami suggests leaving the mansion. Chill gets the feeling that even if they try to leave, they won't be able to escape. Nami, angered by this, heads back downstairs to the front door alone. She opens the front door, but immediately closes it. The yard is now filled with rattlesnakes blocking their escape. So they decide to look for a phone to call for help. Beyond the stairs on the first floor, 2 hallways lead in opposite directions. I choose the left path. Checking the first door, they come across a study filled with books. Black Magic, Fundamentals and Practical Applications, Christ and Fish, and Baphomet, The Secret Art of Curses and Revenge are among the titles kept here. Great. As they exit the room, Nami spots a phone underneath the shelf with the fish tank. It's an old rotary-style phone, and as Chill picks the receiver up, something whooshes past his face. An axe has fallen. Turning around, they find the suit of armor back in its spot from earlier. They assume the axe fell from its grip. And what's more, the axe cut clean through the phone line. Maybe this needs to be explained for younger members of the audience, but telephones used to have to be connected to wall outlets by cords, and if the cord is disconnected, no phone service. Just as Chill is ready to give up with the phone, it starts ringing. After picking up the receiver, he doesn't hear anything on the other end, but from other parts of the house, multiple phones begin to ring. Then, all at once, they stop. And Nami and Chill hear another sound from upstairs. They go up again and take a different hallway from before. In the first room they come across, they find straw dolls nailed into every possible surface. The walls, the ceiling, even nailed to the furniture in this room. Each of the nails holding the dolls in place has an Otogirisou wrapped around it. Just then, Chill remembers the symbolism behind the flowers. Revenge. Chill is getting a chill. God, I should have picked a different name. While exploring the upstairs hallway, Chill and Nami find a room that's been nailed shut. Suddenly, Nami declares that she's hungry, and they should go find something to eat. Seriously? At first, Chill is suspicious of this, naturally, but then gives in because he's also hungry. I don't know what kind of food they think they're going to find in this creepy mansion, and up to this point, the story had kind of been flowing along. Then, all of a sudden, there's this abrupt turn of, hey, I'm hungry. It's really jarring. But anyway, we head downstairs to the kitchen. In the fridge, there's a plate of fish, but they're all dried up, which makes Chill think of the mummy from earlier. Then they hear a scream from upstairs and rush back, so the kitchen detour amounts to nothing. There are several doors they still haven't checked, and I choose to check the one that Nami picks. Behind that door is another hallway with only a single door at the far end that's creaking open and closed in the wind. Nami and Chill conclude that they mistook the creaking door for someone screaming. Chill suggests leaving through that open door, but on the other side, they're confronted by a giant bug-eating flower that spits nectar at them, covering them from head to toe. There's no way past the plant, so the couple head back into the mansion. Then, I wanted to get Nami clean soon. I wanted to leisurely submerge myself in the bath. What the hell are these choices? Yeah, so next we end up in the washroom, and the water is running, so Chill lets Nami wash her face at the sink first. While she's washing up, he notices a white steam rising from the water. The steam then seems to take on a life of its own and gets absorbed into the reflection of Nami in the mirror above the sink. Nami doesn't appear to have noticed this. When they swap places, Chill thinks he sees a strange light in Nami's eyes as he looks at her through the mirror. But when he turns around, she's standing behind him looking like her usual self. When Chill turns back to the sink, he sees an old man reflected in the mirror with an evil look on his face. Chill shouts and takes a fighting pose. The man in the mirror does the same. When Nami asks what he's doing, Chill snaps out of it and sees only his own reflection staring dumbly back at him. Nami teases and asks if this is his first time looking in a mirror. Chill responds, "Oh, no, the second." That's one thing I want to point out. Nami and Chill both have a really dry, weird sense of humor that I dig. And because of their personalities, it almost makes up for some of the stranger turns in the story, like stopping for a bite to eat or what's about to happen next. They check the nearby shower room, and Nami declares that she wants to take a shower to wash off the rest of the nectar still sticking to her body. So there's a bit of tension here as Chill tells her to go ahead while he goes to get their bag of clothes they left at the entrance. Then Nami says, "In this big bathtub, I'll be all alone." She couldn't possibly have meant she wanted us to shower together. Lock the door. "Thanks, see you in a bit." Okay then. Chill grabs the bag of clothes without incident and returns. He calls out to Nami, and it seems like everything is alright, but then she suddenly screams. I was startled. Nami screamed when she was completely naked. God, I'm so horny. I mean, Chill is. What? When Chill bursts into the shower room, Nami is already wrapped in a towel. The water coming from the shower head is practically boiling. Chill elects to go down to the basement to find the boiler room, and he just instinctively knows where that is for whatever reason. The water temperature has been set to 100 degrees Celsius. That's 212 boiling point for all you Fahrenheit freaks out there. So Chill resets the temperature, and surprisingly, nothing ends up happening in the spooky basement. But he does start to worry about Nami and runs back to the washroom. When he gets there, she's already dressed and drying her hair. She insists that he get in the shower and wash up while she stands guard outside. I shouted, "Nami!" "Yes?" she replied at once. I like a woman who responds like that. What the hell does that mean? "When I leave, we'll leave." It was a strange choice of words, but it was enough for a close married couple or well-acquainted lovers to understand. What? You said when you leave, we'll leave? She didn't understand at all. No one understands, you fucking weirdo. Just get in the shower. If I was with Nami here, I'd feel even better. Oh my god, dude, just stroke one out and let's get the hell out of here. While washing up, the faces of two twin girls appear in the water. Whoa, cancel the stroking, cancel the stroking. When Chill tries to speak to them, they disappear. Chill decides it's time to leave, but the shower door won't open. He shouts to Nami, but gets no answer. Then, storm clouds form in the shower room. I should have listened to the weather forecast more carefully. God. And then the armor appears out of nowhere in the shower room and slashes at Chill with its sword. Say goodbye to your dick. Chill crashes through the shower door, scoops up his clothes, and runs out into the hallway. Nami is nowhere to be seen. As Chill shouts her name, he catches a glimpse of a woman in a white dress rounding the corner at the far end of the hallway. Thinking it's Nami, who else could it be? Chill chases after her, but wonders why she's wearing a white dress all of a sudden. When he gets to the end of the hall, Nami stands before him, but then floats upwards and disappears through the ceiling. A pair of eyes stare at him through the darkness, and he hears a woman's laughter from far away. But it fades into the sound of the howling wind outside until he's left alone in the darkened hallway. Is he still naked? Chill rushes off to look for Nami and finds her crying in a room all by herself. There are many toys for girls that were popular about 10 to 15 years ago. Apparently Chill has a knack for accurately dating children's toys. Nami mentions that the toys in this room make her feel nostalgic. Chill agrees, but Nami says it's not that the era the toys are from make her feel this way, it's these specific toys and the room itself. This is also when she notices that there are 2 of each toy in here. As both Nami and Chill wonder why each toy has a twin, one of the toy monkeys banging on a cymbal attacks. Chill fights it off, and they rush back into the hallway. Nami then notices scratches on a thick pillar protruding from the wall near the toy room. They appear to be marks made to compare the heights of 2 children. The names Nami and Naomi are engraved nearby. Nami is instantly convinced that this is her name and that she compared heights here with another girl. Chill tries to rebuke her by saying that plenty of Japanese women have the name Nami. It's just a coincidence. As they stand there, staring at the marks, new ones appear before their eyes and stop at the same height Nami is now. Then they hear a sound, which they pinpoint to a weird painting hanging in another nearby room. The painting depicts two girls in medieval attire fighting over a sword, with an old woman in between who appears to be their mother. Around the painting's frame are more Otogirisou. Nami notices that the two girls in the painting have the same face, and Chill wonders if they're twins. That's when Nami has a revelation. She was a twin. Chill reminds Nami that she's an only child. He's met her family, and no one mentioned a sibling. They begin to feel a strange aura coming from the painting, so Chill pulls Nami away back into the hallway. Standing there in the darkness is a woman in a white dress. Her long, dark hair obscures her face. She approaches the couple and passes something to Nami. A gust of wind blows, parting the young woman's hair, revealing Nami's face. She disappears with the wind, and Nami is left holding a bloody knife. She screams and throws it away, and Nami has a complete breakdown. She drops to the floor, clutching her head. Chill asks what's going on, and Nami says that she hears her mother screaming in her head, screaming as she's being stabbed by Nami and her sister. Nami is convinced she was raised in this house. Her real mother lived here, and she had a twin sister named Naomi. The people she lives with now are her adoptive parents. Nami then tells Chill to run away. She needs to deal with her mother and twin sister alone, and she wants Chill to leave without her. Chill refuses, but Nami says the mansion is cursed, and she's part of the cursed family who lived here. If they plan to hurt the person she loves, then she has to take responsibility. To which Chill replies, "That's a man's job." Oh, shut the fuck up, Chill. Nami is happy that Chill has chosen to stay with her, even though he is a dweeb, and we can choose to hug her very naturally or awkwardly, for whatever that's worth. Chill leads her to a nearby window and tells her to get some fresh air to calm herself down. He tells her he's going off to investigate the mansion alone, but Nami won't hear of it and ends up going off on her own. Chill chases after her, but somehow loses her in the darkness. A door to one of the rooms in the hallway is open, and inside is a scale model of the mountain with the road they were driving along. A toy car is placed on its side in the exact spot where the brakes went out on them. Then, Chill hears Nami scream. In another room, Chill finds Nami holding two maternity health record books. One is for Nami, the other is for Naomi. This proves that Naomi and I were born here. I laughed meaninglessly. Like I always do. Chill still believes that it's just a coincidence, but Nami shows him that her birth date and blood type are written inside. Nami hallucinates seeing blood on her own hands and runs away, convinced that she's going to end up killing Chill. He chases her out to the courtyard, where he finds her among several pairs of women, all crying in front of blood-stained swords stuck into the ground. Nami warns Chill not to come any closer. These women are all twins who killed their mothers in this house. She and her sister Naomi are exactly like them. The wind howls and Nami and the many twins disappear. Chill frantically searches the house again and finds Nami standing in one of the upstairs hallways. As he approaches, her body floats into the air. Suddenly, Nami rushes in front of Chill to protect him. Turns out the woman floating in the hallway is actually Nami's twin sister, Naomi. Naomi reveals that she and Nami killed their mother. Chill refuses to believe this, but Nami quietly confirms it. Naomi says that Nami must be punished. She then vanishes, and Nami faints. Chill takes her in his arms, and she wakes up. As she wonders why she was the one sent away, why she was the only one that was abandoned, the house starts to shake as if in response to her questions. Nami's body is pulled from Chill's arms by an invisible force and disappears into the darkness. The house is silent once again. Nearby, another door is slightly ajar. Another room they haven't explored yet. Inside is a boudoir. Naomi is standing in the middle of the room. She repeats over and over, "We killed our mother," and begins to cry. "We should have been punished as children. I already was." Naomi is already dead, and she says that Nami also has to die, or else. Chill finishes her sentence. "Or else she'll be cursed and turned into a mummy." That was oddly specific. Yes, that's right. What? Naomi explains that the mansion's curse caused them to kill their own mother. The mansion was built in Europe during the Middle Ages, and the curse began there. In the late 1800s, a rich Japanese person bought the house and dismantled it, then rebuilt it here in Japan, where the curse continued. Before Chill can learn more, Naomi disappears. Back in the hallway, another door opens before him. He finds Nami standing in front of the window he was going to leave her at earlier. Outside in the courtyard are rows of gravestones in pairs. Naomi appears beside Nami and Chill at the window. She reveals that on her 7th birthday, she and Nami stabbed their mother with a sword. The sword then appears in Nami's hand. It shines, and in the light, Nami and Chill see 2 children stabbing their mother to death. Nami accepts that she needs to be punished for what she's done, or otherwise succumb to the mansion's curse, which is apparently to be turned into a mummy. Chill says that he's coming with her no matter what. He'll be punished too if that's what it takes. But Nami says not to torment her and runs into another nearby room. This turns out to be a prayer room, with many lit candles. Nami kneels and begins to pray. The sounds of crying children fill the room. Chill finds an old newspaper article pinned to one of the walls. It's from the time that the mansion was rebuilt and recounts a story of a mother who killed her twins in this mansion. The article goes on to detail the legend in Europe that states mothers who lived in this mansion would be cursed to give birth to twin girls and kill them with their own hands. Chill realizes that Naomi had it wrong. It wasn't daughters cursed to kill their mothers, it was mothers cursed to kill their daughters. Then Chill remembers the diary they found when they first entered the mansion. He takes Nami to that room and they find the diary on the floor where they left it. It belongs to Nami's mother, who writes about the birth of her twin daughters. She's worried about the mansion's curse. A few days after their birth, she tried to kill them, but her husband stopped her. A day later, her husband died under mysterious circumstances. She wonders if this is also part of the curse. Nami's mother writes about her struggles raising the girls by herself while constantly having to fight against the curse. Nami wonders why they didn't try to leave the mansion. But one of the diary entries explains that women in the past who tried to do just that all died in strange ways. In another entry, Nami's mother states that she can't fight the curse anymore and ends up putting her daughters up for adoption. Nami wonders how Naomi died if she was put up for adoption too. They hear Naomi's laughter from somewhere else in the house. Nami runs off to find her. Chill tries to follow, but a sword flies out of the darkness and sticks into the floor in front of him. We can choose to ignore the sword or take it with us. Chill takes it along, but then falls under some sort of spell and tries to kill Nami with it. Then another sword appears, and he starts fighting the flying sword. But all the while, he's still trying to attack Nami. Things get a bit confusing here. Anyway, he ends up dropping his sword, but now the sword he was holding takes on a life of its own and flies straight at him. Chill passes out. When he awakens, he sees a beautiful woman sitting in a wheelchair and knows immediately that this is Nami's mother. He realizes that he's seeing the past. I'm the wall. So yeah, Chill has become this disembodied point of view watching these events play out. Naomi enters the room soaked from the rain outside. She's the same age as Nami is now. Naomi says she walked an hour and a half at night on the mountain road just to get here. Naomi figured out the truth, that their mother put the twin sisters up for adoption, and afterwards she suffered an accident which put her in a wheelchair. But her mother insists that Naomi leave, saying it's only the curse that summoned her here. Naomi says that it wasn't the mansion's curse, but her love for her mother that brought her here, and she begs to spend just one night in her childhood bedroom. The scene changes and Chill finds himself in Naomi's bedroom. He sees Naomi sleeping in her bed. The door opens and Naomi's mother enters. Wheeling the chair over to the bed, she raises her hand and reveals a sword. Chill can tell from her grimacing face that she's being controlled by the mansion's curse. Naomi's mother tries to fight it, her arms shaking from the effort as she holds the sword above her head. Suddenly, Naomi awakens and runs out of the room screaming. The scene changes again, and Chill sees Naomi's body lying at the bottom of the stairs near the entrance. In a panicked state, Naomi ran and in the dark misjudged the stairs. Her mother, no longer under the curse's control, wheels herself to the top of the stairs and screams as she catches sight of Naomi's body. Naomi's ghost rises and tells her mother that even though she didn't kill her, Naomi died anyway, but she'll make amends. She'll bring Nami here, then they'll all be together again. The sword appears in Naomi's hand, and she tells her mother, "I'll have you kill her with this sword." Naomi's mother screams in protest, saying that she'll never kill her daughter. Laughter rises from somewhere within the mansion, and a strong wind blows. A white steam rises from their mother's body, and it instantly dries out, turning into the mummy in the wheelchair that we've seen in the house. Everything turns to darkness. In the dark, Chill hears voices. Naomi is bringing Nami to their mother. Chill tries desperately to call out, but he has no voice. He suddenly feels an evil presence and realizes that this is the spirit of the mansion itself. The mansion speaks to him, revealing that it is the spirit of the first owner. In 1800, he gave birth to twin princesses in this mansion while it stood in a forest in France. 1800 isn't the Middle Ages like the game implied earlier, but yeah, maybe the podunk local newspaper got the details wrong. Anyway, his daughters killed him in a struggle for power, so he cursed the mansion and the sword they used to kill him. His curse was that each of his daughters would give birth to twins, and then those children would kill their mothers, exacting the father's revenge on his greedy daughters. Chill points out that his revenge has already been served and asks why the curse continues. The spirit explains that the greed and hatred his daughters possessed still survive to this day. And that's it. And then it just leaves. Chill is still a disembodied presence, and he sees what's happening in the mansion right now as Naomi leads Nami down the hallway. At the end, the door to the room that had been nailed shut earlier slowly begins to open. Chill struggles to release himself, and as Naomi and Nami disappear into the room, an empty wheelchair appears in front of him. It rams the wall over and over, cracking and splintering it, and Chill finds himself back in his own body. So he was somehow actually in the walls of the mansion itself. There's no time to dwell on the metaphysics. Chill rushes to the end of the hall. The nailed door is now closed again, and it won't budge. It turns transparent though, allowing Chill to see into the room beyond. Nami and Naomi are on their knees praying in front of the mummy sitting in its wheelchair. Nami and her sister are possessed, saying that they accept their mother's punishment for having killed her. The sword appears in the mummy's hand. Creaking and cracking, the mummy stands and raises the sword above its head. The sword comes down, but stops just inches from Nami and Naomi. Chill believes that inside the mummy, the curse's power is battling against their mother's love. Tears of blood begin to flow from the mummy's eyes. Chill yells for Nami to speak to her mother. Nami snaps out of her possession and shouts that she loves her. A bright light shines from within the mummy, and it explodes. The explosion rips the door off its hinges, and Chill rushes into the room to grab Nami. As they run down the hallway, the suit of armor appears again. So they charge at it, but the armor doesn't budge. They turn to run, but the armor only makes it 2 or 3 steps in pursuit before a yellow vapor flows from its body and it falls to pieces on the floor. A green cat then appears from within the armor and runs off. Okay. As Chill and Nami try to figure that out, an explosion rocks the mansion. The boiler in the basement has finally given out. Flames spread quickly through the house. As fire blocks their exit, it seems hopeless, but then a golden light leads them through the flames and outside to safety. They look back as the mansion collapses. Almost supernaturally fast, the fire burns out and nothing is left where the building once stood. They wonder if it was Nami's mother's spirit or Naomi's that took the form of the golden light that led them out of the mansion. Chill and Nami look up at the stars, and Nami says, "Mother, Naomi, thank you, and now, farewell." Aside from some goofy moments, strange turns, and other inconsistencies, I think the core of this story is well put together. I always like when horror has a tinge of sadness to it, and so, yeah, overall I walked away pretty satisfied with how this all played out. Some of it is a little overwrought, leaving me scratching my head as to why certain scenes were included at all. Like the suit of armor appearing at the end, but then collapsing and turning into a cat. I guess they just needed to wrap that up somehow, because they'd already introduced it earlier in the story. Maybe it makes more of an appearance in the other ending paths. Remember, there are tons of different choices to make and 9 other endings to see. I felt like I found the quote-unquote good ending here, so I was curious to see what else I could find in Otogirisou. When the credits finish, the game just lingers on the end screen, so we need to reset. But after pressing start on the title screen again, instead of jumping back into the story, we see a list of save files with the phrase loop number 2, as well as this number below it. Okay, so the game keeps track of how many times you've played through it. That's nice. We can then choose to resume or restart. It turns out the game auto-saves at intervals, and you can just close the game at any time and start it up again by resuming where you left off. Or you can choose to restart the current loop. Pretty forward-thinking for a Super Nintendo game. As my second loop began, things started off the same. Driving along a mountain road, tired out from a fishing trip. I'd written down the choices I'd made in my first playthrough and deliberately picked different ones this time. Some details changed, but the broad strokes remained the same. The legend of the Otogirisou, realizing we're lost on the road, the other car forcing us off, the lightning splitting the tree and crushing our car, arriving at the mansion. Through different choices, instead of being chased by rattlesnakes, we wound up finding animal bones scattered among the Otogirisou in the front yard and spotting some shrunken heads hanging from nearby trees. Upon closer inspection, the heads turned out to be wasps' nests, which is what chased us into the mansion this time. The beginnings of the mansion exploration remained largely unchanged as well, spotting the suit of armor in the water tank, the armor disappearing as we climbed the stairs to investigate a noise on the second floor, and the mummy appearing in the room upstairs. As the story continues to evolve throughout this playthrough, though, Nami's attitude starts to change. She begins running off on her own and goading us to enter certain rooms with an almost mischievous glee. Later on, when we're attacked by the suit of armor, we knock it down only to find Nami inside of it, unsure of what she's doing, or how she ended up wearing the armor in the first place. Chill and Nami find the height marks on a wall on the first floor instead of the hallway of the second. They run out the back to the house's garage and attempt to flee in a vintage car. This is when Nami realizes that she grew up in this house. She was in an accident in this car while her mother was driving. Chill tells her that her mother doesn't have a driver's license, but Nami is convinced that her mother was driving while she was in the car with her older sister and younger brother. Wait, younger brother? Yeah, in this story path, Nami's mother caused a car accident which ended up paralyzing her younger brother. He sat in his wheelchair watching the fish tank every day, dreaming of becoming a fish. And thanks to black magic, remember those books in the library from the first playthrough? He was able to do it. I mean, to become a human-sized fish monster. Shortly after, he makes his appearance and attempts to eat Nami. It was around this time when I started to realize, hey, wait a minute, Otogirisou doesn't just have 10 different endings, there are 10 different stories. I mean, I got to that conclusion when the little brother came into the picture, but it felt more dramatic to hold off on saying it until I told you about him becoming a fish monster. And this looping mechanic was Otogirisou's real innovation on the gameplay of visual and sound novels. Nothing like this had really been done before. Most visual novels had a set story that may or may not lead to a few alternate endings. But here was a game with completely different stories that developed depending on the decisions the player made. And yeah, you know, people who've played this game or have researched it even a little bit probably would have already known this, but I went into my playthrough completely blind without doing any research, so this moment was kind of revelatory. Originally, I was planning to cover this game as a bonus video for my patrons and YouTube members. I have a few of these kinds of videos, and they're fun little no-stress projects that I do from time to time on games that I think are worth talking about, but not deep enough for a full-length video. So when I thought of Otogirisou, I was like, yeah, that sound novel, that'll be quick and easy to talk about. But then this happened, and the entire scope of the video changed. So after playing through a couple more times and finding more paths on my own, I decided to venture out into the wide world of the internet to see if I could uncover any info on how to unlock all 10 stories. And by doing that, I ended up discovering that what I at first thought was just a quick and easy sound novel is actually an intricately layered kaleidoscope of a video game. There aren't really any walkthroughs for the Super Famicom version of Otogirisou, at least in English anyway. There is one Japanese site which breaks down each section of the game and organizes the choices into different paths through it. This guide helps you get to specific endings, but in order to follow it to an ending that you haven't seen yet, you need to work backwards through the guide. And I don't know why the writer organized it this way. It's something to go off of, if you can read Japanese, but it's pretty inconvenient to use. And it's further complicated by the fact that Otogirisou actually has 3 different starting scenarios. I happened to see the same one on my first 2 playthroughs, but on my 3rd loop, I had a slightly different description of events. Instead of being tired out from a day fishing by a river, Chill and Nami were just having fun at the river. So, because there are different ways the game can start, leading to different choices, you'd need to start up your playthrough, see which scenario it began with, and then work your way backwards through this Japanese guide to try to get to a specific ending. Now let me just say, I know this is not the way the game is intended to be experienced. The developers wanted to give players lots of choices and different scenarios so the game could be played many times by an average person, resulting in different stories and experiences each time. And in that regard, it succeeds. Once again, imagine being back in 1992. It would have been a ton of fun to play through this a few times on your own or with friends and always getting a different story by making different choices. That's such a cool thing. But I'm trying to break this game wide open, so having all of these variables and a guide that needed to be deconstructed wasn't making my life easy. So eventually, I stumbled on a post from a user on X called Lord Thantis, claiming to have created a flowchart for all of the choices in the Super Famicom version of Otogirisou. After following a couple of dead Imgur links, I found what I was looking for. And it turns out the game is way more complex than even what the Japanese guide led me to believe. There are actually 4 phases the game goes through as you continue to play through the loops. And with each phase, more choices are added to certain junctions and more storylines become available. I said earlier that I was amazed the game has 10 different stories. In actuality, it has 7 major storylines. One of these features 3 different endings, and another features 2 different ones, for a total of 10 endings. On your first playthrough, when you start a new file, there are only 3 storylines available to you, which can result in one of 5 different endings, depending on your path and choices. Also, right from the start, there are 2 separate beginning scenarios, fishing by the river or playing tennis, that will set you on different initial paths through the game. I didn't end up seeing the playing tennis scenario until my 4th loop of the game. After finishing the first loop, the 3rd beginning scenario, playing at the river, will open up, and 2 more story paths become available, bringing our total number of storylines to 5. And finally, from the 3rd loop on, all 7 story paths and endings become available. Lord Thantis has broken the game up into different chapters and color-coded the different story paths. As you can see, any innocuous choice throughout the game can set you on a completely different storyline. And though there are 7 different stories, the set pieces throughout the game remain mostly the same. It always begins with a car accident on the mountain road, leading to the arrival and imprisonment in the mansion. There's always the water tank in the entrance, the disappearing armor, the appearing mummy, the trip to the kitchen and the washroom, the examination of the boiler. The house is always tied to Nami's past in some way. Nami always has a moment of realization. It's just that the way Nami and her family are connected to the house and what happened in her past are different in each story. Some of these are silly and fun, like Nami's brother turning into a fish monster and her sister Naomi wanting to transform him back into a human. There's another where Nami's father has turned into a gluttonous monster on account of him growing up in post-war Japan and starving as a child because of living conditions in the country. Nami describes him as a vagrant child. Many of them learn to steal and blackmail in order to survive, and they smoke tobacco. Anything but that. In this story, Nami's brother Naoki died when he was only 5 years old because her dad ate all of his food. I mean, just imagine that. The family has 3 kids, but the father only steals food from his son until the kid just dies. I know, that's terrible, but it's so ridiculous that I can't help but laugh. There's another where Nami's entire family are monsters, and Nami herself turns out to be a vampire. An alternate ending to this story has the same things happening, but Nami isn't a vampire. In yet another variation of the monster family story, Nami's family collects shrunken heads. They want to chop Chill's head off and make medicine from his blood and body parts so the family members can continue to live forever. The main ingredient of that medicine is Otogirisou. So this story connects to the legend from the car ride in the beginning of the game. Nami's family members are descendants of the family in the legend, and Chill ends up tricking her father into revealing the secret recipe for the medicine. This results in the rest of Nami's family getting their own heads chopped off by the cursed sword that was used to kill the younger brother in the legend. The sword was also handed down through the generations. The stories aren't all silly though. There are more serious ones, like the twins' curse story that I saw in my first playthrough. In another of the more serious ones, Nami's father and brother died in a car accident. Nami's mother couldn't take care of both Nami and her sister Naomi by herself, so she had to choose which one of them to put up for adoption. Nami was chosen. Naomi's grief over the loss of her father and brother and her guilt over the fact that Nami was the one sent away caused her to develop psychic powers, though she didn't realize it. She thought that Nami was angry with her and was making poltergeist-type things happen in the house. On her 14th birthday, Naomi's powers go out of control and she turns into a mummy. Chill and Nami find all of this out by reading her mother's diary. Chill recalls the Jungian concept of the shadow, the ego in the depths of our subconscious, the parts of ourselves that we want to keep hidden, sometimes even from ourselves. According to Chill, it can also become a split personality and cause supernatural phenomena to occur. Not sure if Jung had figured that part out. The diary ends after Naomi turns into a mummy, and Nami wonders what happened to their mother. The house begins to shake, and by asking questions and waiting for the house to shake in response, they realize that somehow Nami's mother's spirit has become one with the house. Look, just because overall some of the stories take on a more serious tone doesn't mean some of the story beats aren't ridiculous. In the end, it turns out that the shadow haunting the mansion doesn't belong to Naomi, but to Nami, a manifestation of the loneliness and resentment she felt as a child after being put up for adoption. So Naomi was right the whole time. Chill has a conversation with the house, actually Nami's mother, where she says that the shadow will eventually take over Nami's body and kill her. Nami pleads with Chill to use her father's sword and end her life before the shadow fully possesses her. Reluctantly, he agrees, but before he can, the shadow consumes her. Nami manages to fight it off and jumps from the second-floor window, attempting to kill herself. Nami's mother's spirit ends up saving her from falling to her death. That doesn't solve the issue of the shadow taking over her body, though. Nami re-enters the house and her body bursts into flames. As the mansion begins to burn, Naomi and their mother's spirits fight against the shadow, ripping it from Nami's body. Chill pulls Nami from the burning house and the shadow is defeated. However, Naomi and their mother's spirit had to sacrifice themselves to put it down once and for all. And due to their sacrifice, the field of Otogirisou surrounding the mansion turned into wildflowers. For some reason. In yet another story path, Chill is enchanted by the mansion and turns into an older version of himself. In this story, Nami's father and brother were killed in the car accident, Nami was put up for adoption, and Naomi died of an illness shortly thereafter. Nami's mother was all alone in the house, but later another man came into her life. This turned out to be Chill's father. Nami's mother fell in love with him, but he eventually left her. He was just having an affair, as this all took place after Chill and Nami were already born. Nami's mother then fell into a depression and became the spirit haunting the mansion. When Chill entered, she recognized his aura and turned him older so he resembled his own father. They're eventually able to break the spell and escape the house with the help of Naomi's spirit. Then there's the burning path. This story has 3 different endings that split near the very end. There are still some variations throughout, depending on the choices you make. In a nutshell though, things remain similar until the washroom scene, when Nami and Chill find all kinds of medicine and creams to treat burns underneath the sink. They end up discovering a diary belonging to Naomi instead of the girl's mother, in the room with the mummy. When she was a child, Naomi was burned badly in a fire. To heal the wounds, she needed to use creams that had a strong odor. so children at school bullied her because of the smell and the scars the burns had left on her body. It's revealed that Nami was the one who accidentally started the fire, and her mother sent her away because of it. But their mother told Naomi that Nami died in the fire, which I don't know why she did that. But Naomi doesn't believe it anyway and becomes obsessed with meeting her sister again. Their mother dies at some point, and Naomi lives in the mansion alone from then on. After losing track of Nami in the house on account of her getting a bit out of sorts because of all these family revelations, Chill decides to check the room that's been nailed shut and is electrocuted by a trap set on the doorknob. He loses consciousness and wakes up later, hogtied and laid out in a coffin by Naomi. Her burns have mostly healed, but she reveals that she still has a nasty scar on her forehead, which she covers with her bangs. She mentions that she never had any human friends, but she's made other kinds of companions with the grass, the wind, and the stars, insinuating that Chill and Nami's accident on the mountain road and arrival at the mansion were orchestrated by Naomi. This may be where that scene where Chill finds a scale model of the mansion and their overturned car that I described in the first playthrough fits into the picture. And so Naomi tosses a lit candle into the coffin with him and closes the lid. Chill manages to escape and searches the now burning mansion for Nami. At one point, he runs into the animated suit of armor, defeats it, and takes its axe. He finds the sisters upstairs in the room that had been nailed shut. They're now both wearing the same white dress, but Nami is tied to a chair while Naomi mixes up some strange acidic concoction. Her goal is to apply it to Nami's body and give her the same scars that Naomi has, truly making them twins. Chill busts in and tosses the axe at Naomi, just barely missing her, but causing her to spill the acid all over the mummified body of their mother, which is also in the room. Chill unties Nami and they attempt to escape the burning house. At one point, they get separated by the flames and are forced to escape through different parts of the house. Once outside, they reunite. The mansion collapses and they hear a scream from inside, a voice calling out Chill's name. Chill turns back to look at Nami, who brushes aside her bangs, revealing on her forehead, ... That's a pretty good twist. The second ending to The Burning Path has some different events play out, but it ends the same way. The third ending, however, reintroduces Nami and Naomi's younger brother, Naoki. In this story, their father and brother got into an accident, but Naoki survives. However, he's crippled due to his injuries. Nami is sent away, and later on, their mother dies. Naomi is left alone to take care of Naoki. In the end, though, we discover through reading their mother's diary that Naoki died in the accident, and Naomi became delusional afterwards, imagining that she was still with her younger brother. Their mother tried her best to take care of Naomi, but she died, and afterwards Naomi was left alone and fully consumed by her delusions. Now that Nami has returned, Naomi wants her to stay, and she wants Chill out of the picture. A fire starts in the house once again, and Chill and Nami manage to escape. Nami wants to go back in to rescue her sister, but there's no way to enter the inferno of the mansion. Naomi burns to death in the house while searching for her younger brother, whom she still believes to be alive. That one is probably the most depressing story of the bunch, and for the most part eschews the supernatural trappings of the other stories. Except, of course, for Chill and Nami being inexplicably drawn to the mansion in the first place. And you may end up walking into an animated suit of armor or a fish monster, depending on your choices, on the way to that final story path. But, you know. One thing that's really interesting about all of the different stories and all the different choices that lead to all of these endings are all the moments of foreshadowing. God, could I use the word all enough in that sentence? Not just foreshadowing events that will happen later in the story path that you're currently on, but foreshadowing other stories as well. Technically speaking, this is just the result of having these intertwining possibilities for where the choices could lead you. You may choose things that put you on one path, but then make a critical choice later that switches you onto another. Like in my second playthrough, when the shrunken heads were foreshadowed in the front yard, but then I ended up having a different story play out, and I didn't see the shrunken heads story until like my 5th loop of the game. In practice, this makes the entire experience really fascinating. Other moments of foreshadowing include the part where Chill tries to hold Nami's hand while walking through the forest, and she recoils, saying his face looks like a mummy. Then there's the scene in the washroom where a certain choice has you seeing your own aged reflection in the mirror above the sink, pointing to the story where Chill is turned into an older version of himself. Not to mention the vision of the twin girls in the shower room, and a dozen other little moments that may or may not end up being relevant to the story you actually end up witnessing. I like how the devs and writer wove all of that together. It almost turns Otogirisou into a meta-narrative. Speaking of which, once you've seen 9 of the endings, when you boot up the game again, your save file will turn pink. And yeah, this happened for me after seeing only 9 of the endings. I think it's because I had seen all of the major story paths. The only ending I hadn't seen before this happened was the one where Nami's family are monsters and she turns out to also be a vampire at the end, which is a variation on the monster family ending, so maybe that's why. I've also read that you can watch the same ending over and over again and eventually wind up turning the save file pink, but I don't know for sure about that. When you resume from the pink save file, you'll have access to all of the choices in every decision point throughout the game, and an 8th story path opens, which also unlocks an 11th ending. This has been dubbed the Pink Blossom Path by the Japanese guide writer, and for all intents and purposes, it's the horny path. The funny thing about this story is that it's also technically foreshadowed through some other choices. The main character is a horny dude, and there are moments throughout where you can choose to attempt to put a move on Nami, or imagine seeing her naked in the shower, and so on. But in this story, the purpose of driving the mountain path is to head to the mansion, which Chill already knows about and is a popular spot for young couples to spend an evening alone. Chill pretends that the car breaks down, but Nami already knows about the mansion and his plan, and she's into it. There are also some fourth wall breaking moments, subtly making fun of you for playing through the game this many times to unlock this path to begin with, you master Otogirisou storyteller you. When they arrive at the mansion, there's even a sign outside advertising the Otogirisou Hotel. So both Nami and Chill are up for this whole experience, but after arriving, things devolve into a horror story, though with some sexy twists along the way. Like a lot of horror stories, actually. As they wander the mansion, Chill catches glimpses of a naked woman who looks like Nami wandering the halls. The strange noises they hear also sound like couples having sex in other rooms. The whole washroom/shower sequence almost turns into a full-on sex scene, but when Nami invites Chill into the shower with her, he backs down and says she should go first while he gets the bag of clothes from downstairs. Chill, you fucking coward. Though he does walk in on a naked Nami in the shower after returning from fixing the boiler. But he quickly realizes that this is not the real Nami. And so we come to the realization that Nami and Chill have some connection with this house. They find a wedding photo of 2 people who look just like them. Also, while Chill has been seeing and getting molested by a naked Nami, it turns out Nami has been having the same experience with a naked Chill. Later on, when they read the diary, they find out that Nami's father and younger brother died in an accident. Nami was put up for adoption, and Naomi was left alone in the house with her mother. At some point, Naomi met a man who looked like Chill. They got married, but he cheated on her and was about to leave her. Before he could, Naomi killed him and sealed his body within one of the walls of the mansion. Also, calling back to the part in the twin story when Chill winds up imprisoned in the walls. Naomi's mother witnessed the whole crime and was devastated. Not just because her daughter was a murderer, but because she had fallen in love with the young man too. Naomi then killed herself, and her mother turned into a mummy. The spirits of the 3 who died here haunt this place and play pranks on the young couples who enter the house. Chill points out that all of this must have happened fairly recently, like within the last couple of years, since Nami and Naomi are twins and Nami has just turned 20. And yeah, the timing of it all feels weird. It seems like a story from a long time in the past, but it could have happened as recently as a couple weeks ago. Also, it's never explained why the guy looks like Chill. I guess it was just a coincidence. Anyway, as Chill and Nami attempt to escape, Chill gets molested by Naomi's spirit while Nami is attacked by the male spirit. They manifest as these strange wisps of smoke that creep under their clothes and basically start edging them. The only way Chill and Nami can fight them off is by making out with each other, their own lust combating the spirits. I kid you not, this is what's being described here. Oh. They came. They sure did. Once the spirits are blue-balled by Nami and Chill's makeout session, the mansion suddenly sets on fire. I don't know if this is because of the boiler situation or what, but they need to now escape the burning mansion. And Nami's mother creates a path through the flames for them so they can get out. As the mansion collapses, Chill and Nami stand in the field of Otogirisou, which suddenly turn into fireflies for some reason. Nami shouts, "I'm sure Mother did that." Yeah, sure, makes about as much sense as anything else. And it's sort of implied that the two bone here in the field as the fireflies shine and turn into stars. Wow. So, if all of that wasn't enough, if you take a look at Lord Thantis's last couple flowchart phases, you may notice that there are some epilogues at the bottom. These occur in certain scenarios when you get the same ending twice, and they're sort of like prank bonus endings. But certain paths hold multiple epilogues that can only be revealed by playing the same story up to 3 times. Our horny story path needs to be played through 4 times to reach what Lord Thantis dubs the true epilogue. But achieving all of this would ultimately require someone to play through the game at least 20 times. And even if you're using an emulator, there's no cheating with save states here, because you need to view the ending and reload your game for it to register on the save file. But who would be crazy enough to play through Otogirisou that many times just to see a bit of different text scroll across a static background at the end? So I played through Otogirisou 20 times, and yes, these epilogues are outrageous. In the Einstein epilogues, as they're called, it turns out that the monsters within the house were Nami's entire family, all still alive and well, just wearing costumes. Dr. Einstein turns out to be Nami's grandfather, and the whole ordeal through the mansion was just a test to see if the young man Nami brought home to them is worthy of marrying her and joining the family. They even have a grading scale. In the first epilogue, Chill passes with a score of 70, which is just barely passing, but it still counts, so great. In the second, Dr. Frankenstein appears, who's actually the family's manager, whatever that means. Turns out they were scoring on the wrong scale, and Chill fails the test. Her grandfather presses a button, and the once destroyed mansion rises out of the ground again, good as new, and it's implied that you need to take the test again. In the ending path where Nami turns out to be a vampire, in one epilogue she bites Chill, but he's still happy as he sinks into unconsciousness. Get that same ending again, and they both then turn into bats and fly off into the night together. That one's strangely sweet. But following the horny story is the path that leads to the true epilogue. So once again, getting the ending where Nami and Chill bone in the field leads to an epilogue where her family watch from a nearby hill. Following her wise grandfather's advice, we resumed our times of happiness. Nami. Chill. Ah. That one's strangely sweet. Going through and achieving that ending again leads to an epilogue where a group of Dr. Frankensteins, who are invisible for some reason, hand a document to Nami's grandfather. This turns out to be the whole test scoring thing from the other epilogue. The document says that Chill didn't score a 70 because they graded on the wrong scale. Instead, he actually scored a perfect 100. As a prize, the family pays for Chill and Nami's honeymoon. And finally, after playing through this path a 4th time, Nami and Chill awaken the next morning and find a small hill with some gravestones. Nami reveals that her whole family passed away in a landslide 3 years ago. And that is the true ending. Instead of saying end once the credits finish rolling, they now say fin. And that's everything. Although, not really. According to this flowchart, even after playing through the game 20 times, there are still certain sub-scenarios and other bits of the story that I never saw. The number underneath the loop count on the save file is the number of unique choices you've made throughout all of your playthroughs. I don't know how many there are in total, but you could count up all the choices on the flowchart to find out. I'm not going to go through it all again just to read those few things that aren't really going to end up changing the endings, but it's a testament to just how big of a scope this seemingly simple sound novel actually has. I'm in awe of this thing. It's such a weird, spooky, goofy, fun little party trick of a game. I just can't get over how it can completely morph into these wildly different things while using the same building blocks in each story. For a game from 1992 on the Super Famicom, it's a really impressive feat. And yeah, trying to be a completionist and get all of the epilogues is stupid. If you decide to try Otogirisou on your own, don't do that. But it's a cool little bonus for people who go through it multiple times and maybe end up getting the same ending, seeing these further continuations of the story that are just silly bonuses. It shows that the developers really cared about what they were making and what the player's experience would be. And I like that. Now, as I mentioned, Otogirisou ended up being a surprise hit for what it was, and it spurred developer Chunshoft onto creating 2 more sound novel titles. One more on the Super Famicom in 1994 titled Kamai Tachi no Yoru, and another on the Saturn in 1998 called Machi. These games would also inspire other developers to make similar horror-themed, text-heavy, sound novel-esque experiences on the Super Famicom and other consoles, like Pandora Box's Gakko de Atta Kowai Hanashi and Kai Tsukikomuri, as well as Multimedia Intelligence Transfer Company Limited's, what a name for a developer, Getsumen no Anubis. Chunsoft themselves would go on to release enhanced, almost director's cut-like versions of their original 3 sound novels on the PlayStation, calling them the Sound Novel Evolution series. The PlayStation version of Otogirisou and the other titles feature updated visuals, which are based on real photographs and have these short bits of animation that make them feel more uncanny and creepier. Otogirisou on PlayStation also features 2 more story paths, and parts of the story can be seen from Nami's perspective, which is neat. Unfortunately, none of the games I've just mentioned have translations of any kind. As of the making of this video in August 2025, the Super Famicom release of Otogirisou is the only one to get an English fan translation. Although the translators have mentioned that they're interested in working on Kamai Tachi no Yoru, so hopefully we'll see more someday. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the legacy of Otogirisou, which resulted in a 2001 Japanese horror film of the same name, which pulls elements from the game's story to create an entirely new narrative. It's okay. I think you'll get more out of it if you watch it after playing the game itself or just having watched this video, but yeah, I wouldn't call it required viewing for, anyone. And for the English release, they actually did the cursed thing and renamed it St. John's Wort, just totally destroying the whole Otogirisou legend backstory. I love it. And finally, an old Chunsoft classic wouldn't be complete without a Danganronpa spin-off, and that's exactly what we got in 2016 with Otogirisou. It has a similar premise to the original game and even includes the same music and sound effects. In it, you explore a seemingly abandoned mansion in the middle of the woods with GIRI, a character from the Danganronpa series. Choices you make lead to completely different narratives, a total of 8 in all. Otogirisou only received a Japanese PC release that was only accessible by purchasing the 3rd Blu-ray box set of the Danganronpa anime series. But there's an English patch floating around. I'll leave it to you to hunt that down, as well as a copy of the game if you're interested. And with that, I think I've covered everything I wanted to with Otogirisou. It's a thing for sure. I found it incredibly fun to dig into it and uncover all of its twists and quirks. Not every storyline in the game is good, but there are several that I felt were really good. Although I'm glad I happened to get the Twins Curse story on my first playthrough. If I would have gotten the Fish Monster one the first time through, I don't know if I would have been compelled to play it again. I mean, maybe I would have gone and done a bit of research and found out about the different storylines and then come back to it. But yeah, getting a pretty good story the first time through really helped to pique my interest and led me to discovering the game's twist all on my own, which was great. So, if you liked this video, I mean, you use YouTube, you know what to do. But if you really liked it, you could consider joining my Patreon or becoming a YouTube member like these fine folks scrolling on screen right now. They are the Dungeon Dwellers, and anyone who supports on any tier gets to watch videos a few days before I make them public on YouTube. They get exclusive updates from me, and they get access to the Dungeon Dwellers archive, which are bonus videos that I make sometimes. As I said earlier, this started out as a bonus video and grew into what it became, and there are a few other videos that are exclusive to paid supporters. And if you donate with $5 or more each month, you get your name read out loud at the end of videos like these Dungeon Architects. 2Password for Kids, An Owl, Antichrist Alex, Bad Baphomet, Benifer94, Blake Golan, Bliblio Jones, Brian but on Patreon, Chaos Arcanum, Dan, Daniel Hamilton, Danny Kilpatrick, Dan Persona, Darkest Abyss, David Carr, David Host, Delatar Tepes, Dirt Possum, Dollar Store DJ, El Jaguar, Emmeline Payne, Etham Kalash, Eugene, Fnar, Foul Mr. Mime, Fuzzmosis, Garbage Person, Glenn Haven, Gloria Gordon, Half HP, Hibernia Scholar, High Food Court, Horace Rees, Hostile Eldritch, Insidious Bliss, Izzy Lexus, Jack the Nipper, Jared Bynum, Jason Corbin, J-Bud Airline, Jim, John B., Joshua Ayers, Justin Darnell, Kale, Captain Ketchup, Kenny Mitchell, Kevin Hanley, Kira Virgil, Krizik, Crunk Wizard, Kiowa, Lamont Atkinson, Mira, Magic Circuit, Max Grosshandler, Maxwell Valentine, Meownarchy, aka Roxy, Micah Powers, Michael Stenberg, Moonlit Temple to Aphrodite, Mortags, Mr. Loser, Mr. Eater, Neckout the Brave, Nick Wolf, Paul Fierce, Pazuzu, Persparkle, Prinny Dude, Rez, Richard Cutting, Richard Sanchez, Richort 12, Robert Hiller, Rog U, St. Murray, SC Fade, Shannon Gates, Shivering Dova, Sigma Simp 69, Silatixo, Super Sad Dad, The Plaff, The Stoic One, Tucky Ducky, Tyranny Frigate, Vinci, Wolfram C, What I'm Doing Here, Whole Cloud, Yoni 42, Zach Diedrich, and Zethrin. As well as these dungeon connoisseurs. 84D93R, 8-Bit Unicorn, Akai Kiki, Alberto Amatucci, Alex Nadeau, Alex Renko, Ambrowski, Andrew Tovanidi, Angin01, Anthony Labella, Antonio M. Silva, Aronai Saez, Arrested Rabbit, Ashley Black, Ava M. Dumas, B. Saunders, Burger Von Burger, Bewildering Avocado, BBF in Bloxburg, Blue Mantis, Bunzo, Keiichi, Captain Doctor, Captain Swing, Caramel Cream, Cassandra M., Cat, Cerebral, Churm Slurm, Chris Zabaslave Collins, Chumpkins, Claim, Claire Myers, Cloudy Wizard, Cohort, Cormac, Crassus Zero, Crippler Jones, Chris LaForte L, Crooked Rook, Dale Walden, Daniel Tallow, Dapney, Days Clockwork, Dean Hubbard, Dika, Daroko, Devil's Honey, Dr. Jellybean, Dogleaf, Dragon Ace SG7, Drebo Bebop, Dry Kantbrot, Dribdabach, Dungeon Chili, Dust Bunny, Enrico Amato, Eric Clapton, Fangro, Francine Bridge, Gandalf the Gay, Hokon Boyum, Harvey Bodega, Heartman, I'm in Your Walls Drinking Soup, Icehammer 82, Indigo Happy, Irregular Rob, It's a Mia Mia, Nekokami, It's Dizzy, Jack in the Candle, James Chambers, Jason Cook, Jay Jombles, J Rob, Jeffrey Koenig, Gemma, Jericho Igdanis, Joan Valise, Joe Gother, Jollybean, Joshua Weber, King Bonkers, Error 1884, Cami King, Karen Rosenow, Kasumi, Nomadic, Critter, Lady Nagram, Lampshader, Lamidgeton, Leonardo Shores de Souza, Liana, Lux Custodes, Macrophage, Man with Confetti, Masakishi, Matt Norad, Max Allison, Max Cohen, Mick Eldritch, Michael Carpenter, Michael H. Prey, Michael Oliver, Midi is a Bean, Minced Meat, Miss M, Mr. Independent, Monkey Kid 61, Mr. Al Packleton, Mumbles, Nagatochi, Neckrunner, Nelno, Nick, Nifty Woodcock, Old Dead Lemons, Olof Albine, Parapug's #1 fan, Please Keep Making Videos, Poseidon 13, Ralabi, Rasmus Jensen, Rezo 5555, Rifflesby, Rodrigo Vaz Pina Cabral Silva, Roland, Rumicub, Sable, Sarxus, Savifav, Scorpix 22, Sensei Wolfman, Shart King, Sean, Silius Sotis, Cicrin, Skyclad Weeb, Slowbro 96, Slycat, Solar, Sorbet, Spencer Newton, Sweaty Turtle, T, Taylor Martin, the Corsair himself, the Mangled Pancreas, Thief of 16-bit Technology, Tor Dragon, True Axiom, Tuesday Twin, TV's Brent, Vange, Vexen Dagran, Violet, Volkendo, Warrior Song, Whiskey Dono, Wild and Horned Hermit, Zucker, Zills, Your Man in Japan, Zachary Arcane, Zorik, and Nate. Thank you very much for your support, and thank you for watching. Until next time, Otogirisou. Check it out. Dungeon Chill. Out.